Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our session to talk about building agentic workflow products with Launchpad. I'm excited to have you on, and we're going to basically get into it with just a quick recap of the agenda. Before that, I'm just introducing who's on. So I'm Jason Masciarelli. I head Launchpad Go-to-Market and Pega Ventures. And my mission in life is helping software companies and folks that are building on Launchpad to really, maximize the value and help them grow their businesses. I'm joined by Tim Miranda, who's a fellow architect who's been with Pega for a long time, as part of our engineering team, and will be taking us through most of the material today. And then Frank Apap, who leads the provider success team, is also going to be helping us out with questions and answers at the end. All right, so we're going to do just a quick recap of Launchpad, just in terms of an overview. So for you folks who've been on before, it'll be a little bit of a rehash, but I'll keep it short. And then we'll get into building your AI blueprint. So the last webinar that we did, we essentially took you through a deep dive on, building out a blueprint. And so now it's all about, how do you go build? And then we're going to talk about how do you deploy an application that's fully built out on Launchpad to subscribers, and then we'll get into Q&A. So we'll keep it pretty tight. So the next session, just to feature this on November 20th, we're going to go through adding AI features to an existing product, leveraging Launchpad. And so that should be pretty interesting for those of you who have existing software products that you want to add agentic capabilities or other AI features. So we'll talk about how you can leverage Launchpad for that. Great. So just a quick overview. Typically, organizations are leveraging Launchpad to either build an entirely new product, leveraging us for both development and runtime and subscriber management. And so if you look at our website, you'll find a success story about Quavo, who leveraged Pega technology and workflow capabilities to build out their disputes management solution for financial services institutions, and basically scaled that company to more than 50 million in ARR very quickly over the last 5 years, and recently had a funding round with a PE company or a PE firm for $300 million earlier this year. And then we've got other companies that are, startups that are building, and then existing companies that are building new products as well. Another key use case is enhancing an existing product. So again, like our next webinar is more focused on, if you've got an existing product or SaaS product that you want to add capabilities to around workflow or AI, Launchpad's a great way to do that. And then replace or replatform is where organizations want to leverage Launchpad to essentially eliminate their tech debt, build out a new product or new edition of a product. And that's what Fiello has done. And so check out the case study on our website to read about how Fiello has taken their loyalty management for B2B and B2C and has really transformed that product, rebuilt that product that they've had for the last decade, just over the last 4 months. And now they've got, a new architecture. It's an AI first product with lots of AI capabilities, really opening up a new trajectory for their growth going forward. So, and then next so part of what I talked about is last time we went through using Blueprint as part of our free Explore edition to prototype your application. So I encourage you to take a look at that if you haven't seen that session. And then once you build your prototype and your blueprint, you can easily predict and estimate your costs using the Launchpad unit estimator. And then today we're really going to talk more about the focus of today is just how you actually build out your entire app using our full development experience and really taking that to production with our multi-tenant subscriber runtime and subscriber management. So before I hand it over to Tim, just encourage you to check out our website. We've recently added a lot of new content, resources, and so on. If you haven't already signed up, sign up for free for our Launchpad Explore edition, which gives you access to our AI blueprint capability and the unit estimator. And then basically once you're ready to build out your app and take it to market, you can sign up for one of the subscriptions easily, reach out to myself or my team, and we're happy to help and really help you fine tune kind of your use case, make sure there's a good fit, and really help you support you on your journey to kind of accelerating growth as you look at 2026. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Tim.
All right, thanks, Jason. So if you remember from our previous webcast, we had built out a blueprint from scratch for a GRC, a governance regulatory compliance application. And we built out some workflows, data types, personas, everything we would need for the app. So what I wanted to do today was take that blueprint, bring it into Launchpad Studio, and start building out the rest of the app and get it to the point where we can deploy it to a subscriber. So I'm going to go through and highlight some of the things that we do while we're building out the full application. Obviously not going to do everything today during this demonstration, but really some of the highlights there, different places to think about as you're building your app, and kind of the incremental way of doing it so that you build something, try it out, build something, try it out, and then get it ready for your subscriber. So let me just go forward here. All right, so I'm a provider developer here, and I'm in my provider system here. I'm in Studio, and I've already got a couple of existing apps that I've built. And here in Launchpad Studios, where as a provider, I can manage my subscribers, my apps. I can manage who has access to the development system, things like that. But let's just build a new app. So I could use the blueprint file that we exported in the previous webcast, but even easier is I can just select the blueprint from launchpad.io. So I can find the existing blueprint that we built in the previous webcast and select it. And what's going to happen here is it's looking at the blueprint. It's found all the details, the workflows that we created, the different data types that got generated that we customized during the blueprint session, along with the different types of users and personas. For this demonstration, I'm going to have it include sample data because I want to take that contextually generated data that Blueprint created and use it here as I'm developing the app so that I've got pre-existing data for drop-downs and tables and things. I'm going to give the app a unique name, and I'm going to start building it out. So Launchpad now is importing that blueprint. It's going to create the four case types, the different data types, the personas. It's going to create a bunch of starting rules too for themes, for portals, for the end user experience. And again, all of those are just starting points, right? It gives me a fully functional application to start with, and I can try it out. Cool. So we see here that I am in Launchpad Studio here as a developer, and I can see all the different parts of the application that got created from the blueprint, the workflows, the personas. It's created a sample end user portal for me to use with some default gadgets. I've got the different data types, the local and remote data types all set up here, the different types of users. It's also generated some useful stuff here around insights and visualizations for each of the types of data in my system. It's given me a default table that I can use in dashboards and portals, things like that. If you take a look at the portal that it created, you see here that it's created a thing where I can sort of create the different types of work and data records that I need, get access to them, explore my data. And again, this is a springboard, a starting point here. I would obviously start to customize this, change the different gadgets involved based on what I'm trying to do with my application. And probably a little later on, we'll create a dedicated portal for a particular persona in my app because I'm not going to have all the different personas use the same portal here. They're all going to have a different experience. But what I like to do right away after importing Blueprint is try it out. So I can preview the app as a developer. You can see it pulled in that red-gray theme that was generated in the Blueprint. And I can create a new audit process case here. It's got my sample data that Blueprint had generated for me that I wanted to use here. So I can select what framework to audit, different policies to fill out, the required fields, things like that. But this looks good. I have an app that I can actually start trying out as a developer right away without having to build a bunch of stuff first before I even try it. So getting out of preview, back into the studio experience here. You know, the other things that I like to do kind of right off the bat is maybe play with the branding and theming a little bit just to start early. So as I'm previewing the app, it kind of has the look and feel that I want to have. So I'm going to switch my application to use more of a dark theme, and I'm going to customize that a little bit too. So this is the out-of-the-box dark theme for the end user portals. I'm going to override it here real quick so that now I've got a version of it in my application, and I'm going to change the main brand color for it. Right now it's purple. I think I'll try to just use green, give it more of a unique feel. So I like that. So this is the theme that I'm going to use at least starting out here in my application. I think all the other settings are fine for now. You can really, there's a lot of granular control here with the branding and theming. Um, Obviously, I just changed one piece of it. So I'm going to preview again. And here I got my kind of dark theme with the green highlights. So that looks good. Um, and I think that's, so that's sort of where I started. So I imported the blueprint. I changed a couple things. I just changed the theming, took a look at what it got generated, and I tried it out. I previewed it as a developer so I could see how it's going to start to look for end users. And I'm already starting to see a bunch of things here that um, if I were building out a fuller, more robust app, I would think about like what kind of tools do I want to give the end users? What kind of charts should they be seeing? Where should they focus when they first log into the application? So there's a lot of things that I could go and start to modify here and really customize to make this product what I want to put on the market. But so far, so good. So the other thing is I want to add the ability here when someone's doing a vendor assessment to upload the latest contract with that vendor. So right now, when you're doing a vendor assessment, we're just having them select a vendor and then do the assessment. So I think in this first task shape where the user's being asked to select a vendor, I'm going to actually just add a new field to it. Now we don't have a field to store like a file, so I'm going to create the field on the fly here. And I really like doing this way because as I'm looking at what I'm presenting the user, I can think about augmenting the data model and just do it right then instead of having to go somewhere else and think about a schema and stuff like that. So I've added a new attachment field here. This adds that attachment field to my vendor assessment data model. So that's all taken care of for me. And now I'm displaying it here. Now that's part of the data model, I can display it anywhere else in another view. I can use it for processing. So that's a reusable field that we just built in like a minute. So let me preview again. Again, I make a change, I try it out. I make another change, try it out. That way I'm not kind of doing a waterfall where I make a bunch of real incremental development here. So here, yeah, I create a new vendor assessment and I can attach a file to it now. Of course, with Launchpad, you don't have to deal with file storage or security. We handle all that for you. You just think about what do I need to collect from the user? How do I want to use it in my application, in my workflow? We'll take care of the rest. But yeah, that looked good. I think I will switch back to Studio here. So what else can I change here? So let's look at the audit process here. We're capturing information, validations, but right now the same user is going through this whole workflow, right? So the same user that starts an audit process is also reviewing the evidence and validating stuff. That's not quite realistic because it's routing to this current user. So I'm going to use Launchpad's built-in routing capabilities. A lot of options here. I can route it to a work queue, which is like a basket of work for a set of users. I can route it externally. I can do dynamic routing based on decisions and logic. But for this, I'm going to actually route it to a work queue so a set of users can pick up the validation step. But I don't have any work queues defined in my app right now, so I'm just going to create one. Create a new work queue rule here. This is going to be for the control owners persona who are going to be reviewing these audits. So I think I'm just going to create a reviewer work queue, and that's it. Just create the work queue rule. So that's all set. And I'm going to switch back to my workflow, to my audit process workflow, take a look at it. Now we can see that this review evidence step in the validation stage is going to route to that work queue, which is perfect. So someone can create a new audit process, get it started, select the framework. Someone else can actually go through the validation aspect. And really that was as easy as setting that up. So the next thing is I got to actually give one of my personas access to that work queue because I want people to actually perform that work, right? So the control owner persona is the one that I want to be doing that review step. So I'm going to go into the settings for this control owner. This is where we, kind of set a portal for them and also can say what work queues they can access. So I'm just going to edit this access group here, and I'm going to grant them access to that work queue that we just created. So I should see it here. Great. So now anyone who's a control owner can pick up work from that reviewer queue and move an audit process to the next stage, answer the questions and things like that. Um, and people who aren't a control owner won't be able to do that. So let's preview again here. Now I'm previewing as a developer here, so I'm not really acting as a control owner. So I should be able to create a new audit process case, get it started, but I shouldn't be able to actually do that validation step myself. So let's just, say we're doing a SOC 2 review here, and, I'm going to enter some of the required information to get this process started. And then now it's going to move to that validation stage. You can see here that I can't actually do any work here, which is exactly what I want. It's been assigned to that reviewer work queue. Another user is going to have to pick up this work for me. All I can see is stuff that's assigned to me. But I want to try that out. So I want to kind of act as a control owner and try this out. So to do that, as a developer, I can actually choose how I'm going to preview my app. So I can actually say, you know what, when I do preview, I want to pretend I'm a control owner. And this is a really powerful way for a developer to try out the app from different perspectives, from different types of user experiences here. The other thing I'm going to do is at this point, I'm going to create a dedicated portal for control owners. So they're not going to use the default work portal that got created. I'm going to create a portal just for the control owners because I want them to have a very focused experience. I want them to just log in, see what work needs to be reviewed, work on that, pick up the next one. I don't want them dealing with dashboards and charts and all that stuff. So, and then I'm going to create a home page for a control owner as well. Very minimalist, just enough so that they can pick up that work. So I'm going to create a whole new landing page here, and let's make it like the default settings. And in this landing page for a control owner, they're just going to have one gadget. I'm just going to let them see what's in that work queue, the kind of tasks that they need to work on. So I'm going to drop in the out of the box to-do gadget. This is like their work list. And I'm going to actually just have it show, not even stuff assigned to them, just stuff that's in the work queue. So they log in, they should just see things that they need to work on, no other distractions or anything like that. And I'm going to go to my control owner portal, use that new homepage that we just created. Let me just go grab that, make sure that it's in the right order. Yep. So again, very minimalist portal for a control owner. They have one job. I don't want them doing other stuff. And the last piece I need to do to have a dedicated portal here is to make sure that these control owners in their access group, they already have access to that work queue, but I want to change their portal. So now I'm going to make it so that if you're a control owner, that's your portal now. You're going to log in and you're going to see that dedicated minimalist portal. I think that's all the changes I need to make for that. So now I'm going to preview as if I'm a control owner. So I'm going to basically see what it looks like for anyone who's a control owner persona. And we should see that very trimmed down portal here where I can't even can't create work or anything. I just see that one audit case that's sitting there that needs to be reviewed. And yeah, so you can imagine doing that with each of your personas, giving them their own portal with their own sets of gadgets, the things that they need to see to get their work done. Compliance managers who need to see across all the different things going on. You can imagine giving them some charts and visualizations, being able to drill down into work that's in progress and things like that. But each of your personas kind of have a different role in your application. So it's very easy to create their own user experience as it makes sense.
So
Cool.
Tim, this has really been a great kind of demonstration of how, Launchpad's model-driven approach, kind of keeps you from having to, and dealing with custom code to do some of this basic stuff
Yeah.
that, would have taken, weeks probably, if not months to build out. And so really, a software, developer or company rather could, focus on their IP and their value versus worrying about access controls and profiles and personas and portals and all that stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And we mentioned in the previous webcast too that you know you don't have to worry about all of that being tied together. You don't create a workflow for a particular type of user and then have to create another variation of that for another user. Here, you create your workflows. It's the center of your application, and you can then layer on different personas and different integrations, different user experiences incrementally without having to build that all up front. And yeah, like you said, there's no dealing with, okay, I got to deal with a set of front end user stories to have some developers build out that have to be coordinated tightly with the processing user stories and a different set of developers. Um, this is all done here in one place.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And today's intention is really to kind of show you the tip of the iceberg in terms of the capabilities of the full Launchpad dev experience. And clearly there's a lot more capability here that goes beyond Blueprint, but leverages the Blueprint, as a great way to kind of get you started.
Yeah. I'm just touching on a few different highlights here to show the kinds of things that you can be doing after you've imported your blueprint. There's tons of other stuff that you can look at as well. Um,
Let's see it.
so speaking of which, so let's talk integrations. So let's say that in my blueprint, I had the vendor data records sort of stored internally. I wasn't sourcing them from an external system of record. And so right now you can see here that I've got these different data types in my system. They're all being sourced locally from the Launchpad database. Um, but if I wanted to have the vendor data type sourced externally, and for this example, I've set up like a Mockaroo endpoint. So it's a real REST endpoint, but just for the purposes of demonstration. So as if I have my own vendor system of record. And I have an open API spec for it. So I've got that YAML file. I got everything I need. But let's say that at this point in my development of my application, I want to introduce that kind of integration, like a new integration into my application. There's a few different ways to do it. I'm going to walk through one way to do it here, where the platform sort of generates a lot for me, and I can just touch a few different pieces and switch this vendor data type from internally sourced to externally sourced in just a few steps. So let me get that started here. So I'm going to create a new integration system here, and I like doing it this way if I've got like a spec because it just takes care of a lot of stuff for me. So I'm going to tell it I have an open API spec. Here's that YAML file for my vendor system that I created on Mockaroo. I'm going to give it the URL here for my system. Let me just grab and paste that here. And so that's all it needs to get started here. So now I can switch to the specification tab, and it's already kind of pulled out that there's two endpoints in my system of record. Get a list of vendors and get a vendor specific details. I want it to generate REST connectors for both those endpoints. And there, it did it real quick. I'm just going to save that. I can see here now I have two REST connector rules that have been created for me. And I'm just going to go in and customize them a little bit. So it's using now that vendor system of record, which is my Mockaroo endpoint. I'm going to add a timeout here just to be safe. And the other thing I'm going to add is an API key so we can actually see this work against my Mockaroo endpoint. I should probably change this after this demo. And then let me just look at the other REST connector here. So this lets me look up a single vendor details given the name of the vendor. You can see we pass in the vendor name as a variable here. This got generated for me, so already got me started here, saved me a few steps. I'm going to add my API key here as well and a timeout, save that. So now I've got two REST connectors, but I haven't really hooked them into anything yet. So let's take a look at that. So my vendor data type still being sourced internally. So we have to change a couple things here. So I'm going to go into the operations here where we have the ability to look up a single record and to get a list of vendor records. Let's start with the list, see how it's configured right now. So it's configured to source from a database query, from a local database query. So let's change it. So all I got to do here is tell it, no, this is actually sourcing externally from a REST connector. Here's that REST connector that got created. That gets me a list of vendors. And I do need to map the data back, right? So that endpoint's returning me a JSON array of vendor details. So I just need to be able to map that back into my data model. So let's create a JSON transform to do that. So this is going to take JSON and map it back into a Launchpad object here. And so I'm going to paste in a JSON sample from my Mockaroo endpoint. And now just basically mapping 3 fields that are coming back for each vendor. the vendor ID, the vendor name, the vendor type. No transformations needed for these. Lots of options just within the JSON transform to do transformations, string manipulations. Not going to get into that here. But now the vendor list is sourcing externally from a REST connector. I'm going to skip ahead here. Normally I would do the same thing with the other data connection, make a couple other changes, but I'm going to fast forward here. And now we can see that after I made similar changes to the other connector, my vendor data type is now sourcing externally. It's doing REST calls for lookups, REST calls for lists. And you'll notice I didn't have to change anything else, right? I didn't have to change my workflow. I didn't have to change my UX. So let's try it. And this is really like the beauty of Center Out here is I changed the data type from sourcing internally to externally, but I didn't have to touch other stuff in my app. So let's create a new vendor assessment. This list is sourced from my Makaru endpoint. So we see a bunch of new different vendor names to choose from. And we'll see that it's loaded the vendor details here. It knows it's a software vendor. That's all coming from the endpoint. So yeah, it's fully hooked in. I think the fact, like you were saying, with the full stack development, had I done it with that, I might have to consider like changing all the places where I was using that data type to deal with the fact that it's externally sourced. But all of that is abstracted out for me. So my workflow and my user forms here, they don't care where it came from. They just know I'm going to show a list of vendors here. I'm going to show a single vendor that's been chosen by the user in the previous step. The fact that those are making REST calls is just a detail that is kind of under the covers. And I was able to make that switch here in just a few minutes. So, that's one way to kind of do an initial integration. There's lots of different options when it comes to REST integrations and custom integrations. I won't go into here, but just kind of want to give a taste of how you would do one of those things here as you're developing your app. All right, so what else can we do here? So the other piece here is that we're doing branch-based development. So I want to get this into a subscriber system. I want to deploy this live in production. So I'm going to take all my changes, commit them to a branch, merge that branch down to main. I'm going to kind of fly through the developer lifecycle here, just all back to back here. But I've merged everything from the blueprint and all those changes I just made down into main. I'm going to switch to the main branch now. This is where I can publish the first version of my app. It's going to take everything that was done in the blueprint plus all those changes I just did, and it's going to package them together into the initial release of my application. By doing this, I can now deploy this release to existing subscribers, create new subscribers, and have them use this application. And so it's a very simple process to do that. So let's go to our subscriber management area here. So I'm going to create a whole new subscriber, and I don't have to deal with cluster management, sizing, any infrastructure here. I just tell Launchpad, create a new subscriber because I'm going to want to deploy some apps into it. I'm going to make myself the administrator just for the purpose of this demonstration. And I'm going to use the built-in identity management so that when I invite users to this subscriber, they'll get a one-time password email and they can just log in real nicely. No vanity URL set up for this demo. But yeah, this will just take like a minute or two to deploy. And in fact, I think it's probably, if I refresh it here, we'll see that the subscriber has actually already been provisioned. So let me just check that. Yep. So it just took about a minute there.
Hey Tim,
So
can you
now,
talk a little bit about like what just happened? Like basically we created a whole isolation. They've got their own database. It's a complete tenant that's auto scalable, right?
yeah. I mean, it looks like I just filled in a form and submitted it, but under the covers, the Launchpad platform is setting up a complete isolated data storage area, isolated, S3 buckets. It's making sure that this is registered as a new tenant across all the multi-tenant services. And it's making sure that if necessary, things can be auto scale and all that stuff. But it's preparing the multi-tenant platform to have applications deployed so that only people inside the subscriber can access them. And so if you have 5 customers in one day that have purchased your application, in just a few minutes, you can set up those environments for them, start to deploy the application without having to go through all of the manual infrastructure steps you would do with like a full stack application. So,
Nice.
um, but yeah, so this next step is we have a subscriber set up, isolation's already here. So let's actually deploy that first version of the application to the subscriber. So I'm just going to fill in some defaults here. Um, I'm going to give them a generous 5-year contract to start, let's say this week. Um, give them a grace period in case they forget to renew. Um, and then here, this is where I'm going to take the application that we just published, the 0.1.0 version of it with my release notes, and get it deployed out here. Now, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. This takes usually a few minutes to deploy, so I'm going to sort of fast forward here. But yeah, so after about 5-10 minutes, this has been deployed. There's now a dedicated URL for the end user portal, for the administrative portal. And in fact, I got an invite to join the subscriber since I made myself the admin. So yeah, this is fine. It's going to let me go to this URL. So now I'm logging in using the built-in Launchpad identity management here. I didn't want to have to bring Okta or Azure or anything. So it gave me a one-time password. So I'm just going to kind of reset and choose a permanent password here. But logging in, I'm now going to be inside that subscriber system, fully isolated from all the other systems here in Launchpad. And I'm going to be able to see the administrative portal since I made myself the administrator. But now I'm inside the subscriber here where this application's been deployed. And there's a lot that I can configure here. What I'm going to do now actually is just make myself have access to the end user environment as well. So I don't want to just be an administrator. I'm going to act as a compliance manager too, so that I can actually log in and use the system. So let me do that. Let me switch to the end user portal here away from the administrative portal. And here, yeah, we can see that this is the end user portal. We have a dedicated endpoint here under pegalaunchpad.com. I wasn't using the vanity URL, but you can see here I can do everything. I can create cases. This is a live deployment of my application on production for a fictional subscriber, but it's a real deployment and it has all the data that I need to get started here. But yeah, so that was a successful deployment, all just in a few minutes. And that app that I started with the blueprint last week is now running live in production.
That's awesome. And just to be clear, so the design, this can be completely branded and the UI updated really to meet the branding of a software company. So this look and feel isn't static, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, whether it's in Blueprint during the development or even customizing for subscribers, the portal layout, the look and feel, everything here is completely customizable by you as the provider to make the app work the way that you want. So yeah, so that's what I wanted to show today as a whirlwind journey from going from import all the way through to deploying to a live subscriber. But yeah, that's touched on a few different things there: routing, integration, customizing the look and feel, modifying the data model as I'm modifying the UX. And that's just a taste of the developer experience.
Yeah, awesome. That was great, Tim. Thanks so much for going through that. And yeah, again, there's so much more. There's literally like hundreds and hundreds of capabilities here. And this was just meant to kind of give you a taste of kind of what the experience is to go from your kind of Launchpad free account, to really building something that's a, enterprise grade application that you can start selling to, regulated industries or small businesses or wherever you want to go. Cool. So let's move into questions, Q&A. But before we do that, we've got 2 more webinars coming up, as I mentioned. So we've got the adding AI capabilities to your existing apps. So if you've got products that are out in market and you want to add, agentic workflows or AI features, we're going to be talking about that on the 20th. And then we've got an update in terms of new product features and capabilities that are coming in our What's New webinar on December 11th. Great. So if you haven't put any questions in, feel free to drop questions into the Q&A. I've got a couple here that came in, so I can just read them off. So, um, which if, excuse me, what if each of my customers have their own data sources for their integrations?
Yeah, that's very common. And because everything is sort of encapsulated across those different rules, what you can do is use our configuration layer, which I didn't show off today, actually. I probably should have tried to show a little bit of that, but you can mark any part of your application, whether it's a process, a REST connector, an integration system, user view, anything as configurable so that when your app's deployed in the subscriber, within the subscriber administration experience, um, they can go in or you can go in on their behalf and customize something. So you can imagine in my example, maybe the integration system itself and maybe the REST connectors would be marked as configurable so that when I deploy to a subscriber, we go in and put in their endpoint, their API URLs and configure the REST connectors. And at that point, everything else is the same and the workflows will just use that. But yeah, integration is a common place where you would want to use the configuration layer.
Cool. Awesome. And when you were going through the subscriber, so there's a question on this, is you're setting up a new subscriber and you're entering in like their, look like entitlement and kind of contract info. Can that be done through an API at this point?
Let me see. I don't think so. Frank, correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I think that that's something that's probably on the roadmap. A lot of those settings are purely for your bookkeeping, so you can sort of use those as you want so that you can kind of keep track of your subscribers. We just give you a place to store that information.
Got it. And then another one that came in is, our apps built on Launchpad HIPAA compliant? Um, So I guess I can speak a little bit to that, and then Tim or Frank, if you want to add on. But HIP is an interesting one, but our platform is, and it's also SOC 2 and ISO 2701 compliant. The key thing really with HIPAA is that as you build your app, you need to make sure that you also adhere to HIPAA standards. And thanks, Frank, for dropping in the Trust Center link there as well for the details. But if you wanted to add anything to that.
What you said is correct. I mean, the platform starts HIPAA compliant, but you do have responsibility as the app developer to sort of maintain that compliance.
Yeah, great. And then another question is there a limit to how many apps a developer can create on Launchpad?
No, there's no technical limit. We have a lot of providers that create different sandbox apps just to try stuff out. It's your environment, it's your provider isolation. So whether you want to have a bunch of apps to try stuff out or one main app with different branches, it's really up to you.
Cool. All right. Awesome. I think that's all I've got for questions so far.
Jason, I think one just came in.
Okay.
I can ask it and answer it.
Yeah, great.
The question was just, can you talk about multi-tenancy, please? So that's obviously a very broad question, but the entire platform is multi-tenant in the sense that every application and every deployment of that application to a subscriber is completely isolated with its own endpoints, its own database in the back end, and its own encryption keys that follow it through that stack. So there's no sharing of data between providers, developers, no sharing between applications, and no sharing between subscribers of a given application. So it's sort of at 3 different layers where the data is isolated at rest, encrypted independently, and all the endpoints are unique per application / provider. So there's more specific questions, feel free to ask, but generally speaking, it's from the sort of the top down.
Cool. And then another one is, do we have any chance to delete an app from our sandbox instance if not required?
You can reach out directly to through the support, and we can manually do it. We don't have a delete it yourself option right now. For the record, it doesn't cost anything if it's just sitting there. It doesn't use up any usage. units. So we haven't prioritized that as a important thing because it's really just visually clutter. But other than that, it has no real impact.
Yeah.
You can also use, there's a hide apps option that you can hide ones that you don't really want to see. But like Frank said, you're not, there's not a cost associated like having the application just sitting there. So we don't have a, but we can definitely take care of deleting things for you if necessary.
Great. And then with configurable integrations, does that mean data models are two, or are the data models generic to fit all integrations?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that the mappings that you would do from the different endpoints, you can make configurable, right? So that JSON transform that I had that took the list of responses from Monkaroo and pulled it in, that'd be something that could be configurable. Um, I think in terms of the data model of the data types and case types in your system, those are things that you sort of want to have what you need to be able to have the workflow run and what you need to display and things like that. So that's a little more things you would define as you're developing the application.
Great. All right, I think that's it in terms of the questions, and it's a wrap. Thank you so much, Frank and Lena and Tim, for taking us through this today. And I would say, if any of you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. If you want help, kind of identifying use cases or seeing what is a good fit, or you're just looking for help in terms of, strategizing on, product ideas to kind of complement your existing strategy for next year, reach out, and we're here to help. And with that, we'll wrap up. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.